Dear students, I welcome you to the third session of the Histology, Animal Behavior and Applied Zoology paper prescribed by the Mangalore University for 4th semester BSc Zoology. In this session, we shall consider the study of histological features of mammalian stomach. The mammalian stomach is a muscular organ located on the left side of the upper abdomen. The stomach receives the food from the esophagus that is being engulfed. It has a roughly J shape and features a lesser and greater curvature. Okay? You can see here, this is the greater curvature and this is the lesser curvature. The anterior and posterior surface of the stomach is lined by a smoothly rounded peritoneal covering. We can see here the outermost part of the stomach is covered by a peritoneal lining. Superficially, from the outside as well as from the inside, the stomach can be divided into 4 different parts: the cardia, the fundus, the body, and the pylori. Cardia is the region that surrounds the superior opening of the stomach. So in this region, the esophagus meets the stomach. In that particular region is considered as the cardiac stomach or cardiac region. The next region in the stomach is the fundus. It is the rounded, often gas-filled portion superior to the left of the cardia. So this is the cardiac stomach, and to the left of the cardia we can see a superior region and this is sometimes filled with some gas. And the major portion of the stomach is called body of the stomach, and it is the large central portion. Okay, from the fundic region to the pyloric region, this large part where most of the functional aspects of the stomach is present, and this particular region is called the body of the stomach. And the last part, which have the connection with the duodenum, is called pylorus or pyloric stomach. And here, in the junction between esophagus and the stomach, there will be a sphincter which controls the backward movement of food, is called lower esophageal sphincter, which makes sure that the food once being engulfed will not be regurgitated back in the normal condition. As well as the junction between duodenum and the stomach also has a sphincter called pyloric sphincter, which makes sure that the food that is semi-digested in the stomach after reaching the intestine is not regurgitated back. So these sphincters are very important in controlling one-way movement or one-way directional movement of the food that is engulfed. Anatomically, that means if you take the TS of the stomach, it has 4 different parts that could be histologically differentiated based on their staining properties and functional properties. These 4 different layers are called the outermost serosa, the muscularis, externa, or simply it is called muscularis, and submucosa characterized by the presence of blood vessels and connective tissue, and mucosa characterized by the presence of the functional cells of the stomach. That means the secretory cells all are present in the mucosa of the stomach. And the stomach exhibits the longitudinal folds of the mucosa and submucosa. You can see here there are many longitudinal folds which almost looks like the villus of the intestine, and these are called rugae. The rugae will disappear in the distended stomach. That means when you consume the food, the rugae will disappear. This is the special feature of the folds of the stomach. The mucosa also has many gastric pits, which are shallowest in the cardia and deepest in the pylorus. That means the gastric pits are special structures about which we are going to study in the coming slides. Okay, these are shallowest in the cardiac stomach and deepest in the pylorus stomach. As I have already told you, anatomically, the stomach can be divided into four major parts based on their function as well as their cellular components. The mucosa, followed by submucosa and muscularis externa, and the outermost covering called serous layer or serosa. And we shall consider gastric mucosa right now. So this is the gastric mucosa. From this part to this part, it is the mucosa. And this mucosa is composed of simple columnar epithelium of the gastric mucosa is composed of mucinogen producing surface lining cells, but they are not goblet cells. See, in the structure of intestine, we will come across some special cells called goblet cells which secrete mucinogen, but here the simple columnar epithelial cells of the gastric mucosa, they produce the mucus and they create a thick mucus layer over the mucosa so that the HCl and other digestive enzymes secreted may not harm the internal layer of the stomach itself. The lamina propria, so this part is called lamina propria, the place inside the convulsions. Okay, rugae are called lamina propria, and this is made up of a loose connective tissue housing smooth muscle cells, lymphocytes, plasma cells, mast cells, and fibroblasts. And also they contain gastric glands. So you can see here, this is the lamina propria, the space inside these convulsions, which also consists of some smooth muscle cells which are sparsely dispersed. They don't produce any kind of layer here, as well as lymphocytes, plasma cells, mast cells, and fibroblasts. Along with these regions are characterized by the presence of gastric glands. The muscularis mucosae is composed of a poorly defined inner circular layer and an outer longitudinal layer, and occasionally an outermost circular layer of the smooth muscle. So followed by this mucosa, you can see here the mucosa of the stomach is externally composed of, that means the junction between the mucosa and submucosa, we can see a simple layer of muscles, and this layer is called muscularis mucosa or muscularis interna, and this is made up of a poorly defined inner layer. This is not so conspicuous as the other muscularis layer. They are very simple layers, very thin layers, and composed of an outer longitudinal layers. Okay, the muscles are arranged in longitudinal fashion here, and the inner layer is made up of circularly arranged smooth muscles, and occasionally we can see the outermost layer of the smooth muscle also. Generally there will be two layers, okay, one circular and another one longitudinal. You can see here these two are called muscularis mucosae, and occasionally there will be one more layer also. So the next part in the anatomy of stomach is the gastric submucosa. This gastric submucosa, you can see here this layer, it is very conspicuous in this diagram. Okay, this is flanked in between the mucosa and the muscularis externa. And this gastric submucosa is composed of dense, irregular, collagenous connective tissue. It also hosts fibroblasts, mast cells, and lymphoid elements embedded in the connective tissue. So this is the connective tissue where you can see all these cells embedded. And they also house the Meissner plexus. They also possess arterial and venous plexus that respectively supply and drain the blood. You can see here plexus means network. So there are arteries as well as veins, and we know that the function of artery is to carry oxygenated blood from heart, as well as the function of vein is to carry back the deoxygenated blood. And some vessels of mucosa is also present in the submucosa of the stomach. The submucosa of the stomach is followed by the third very important layer called gastric muscularis externa, or simply muscularis externa, or the muscularis externa of the stomach. The muscularis externa of the stomach is characterized by the presence of three layers of smooth muscles. You can see here 1, 2 and 3 layers of smooth muscles. So the inside, it has a layer composed of obliquely placed smooth muscles. Here, okay, these are the obliquely placed smooth muscle, followed by the middle circular layers, okay, which is very thick. So this is the middle circular layer of the smooth muscle, and this circular layer of the smooth muscle is responsible for the formation of pyloric sphincter, and this circular layer is followed by the outer layer of longitudinally arranged smooth muscles. Okay, please remember there will be three important layers in the muscularis externa, and these three layers are composed of smooth muscles arranged in different fashion. The innermost layer is composed of an obliquely placed smooth muscle, and the middle layer is circularly arranged smooth muscle, and the external layer is longitudinally arranged smooth muscles. Orbach mesenteric plexus or simply mesenteric plexus are located between the middle circular and outer longitudinal smooth muscle layers. So you can see here certain structures which are colored in yellow here and here. You can see them. They are called Orbach plexus or simply mesenteric plexus. They are placed in between the middle circular and outer longitudinal smooth muscle layers. And the function of this muscularis externa is to produce the characteristic movements of the alimentary canal and is responsible for mixing gastric contents and emptying the stomach. So this mixing and emptying of the stomach is only possible when the characteristic movement called peristaltic movement is produced by these three differently placed smooth muscles, and it is also affected by various characteristics of chyme. Example, the lipid content, viscosity, osmolarity and caloric density as well as pH, which influence the emptying rate of the stomach and rate of muscle contraction. So if any foodstuff is having some effect on the contraction of the muscle, then they may affect the speed or acceleration at which the stomach emptying is taking place. The outermost covering of the stomach, you can see here, is called serosa. The innermost mucosa followed by submucosa, the muscularis externa, and this muscularis externa is covered by a special layer made up of thick connective tissue layers called serosa, and it is the one which covers the entire outer surface of the stomach. One of the very important as well as characteristic feature of the stomach is the presence of gastric glands. And these gastric glands are simple branched tubular glands. You can see here these are simple glands with a single layer of cells. Okay, there are no multiple layer cells, and they are tubular glands. They are tube-like as well as they are branched. You can see here the branching of the gastric glands. And they are present in the lamina propria of cardiac stomach, fundic stomach as well as the pyloric stomach. Each gland consists of an isthmus. You can see here this is a neck-like structure of the gastric gland, the region where the gland is connected with the stomach. This neck region is called isthmus, which connects the gland to the base of the gastric pit. Hence, there are two important parts in the gastric glands, the neck as well as the base. Now, base is the functional part which produces different enzymes and other things, and the neck is the one which connects the base to the gastric pits. So this is the enlarged portion of a single gastric gland. So you can see here presence of different types of cells with different functions, and let us study the detailed function of each cell one by one. Very important as well as The characteristic feature of the gastric gland is the presence of parietal cells or oxyntic cells. You can see here the cells which are having many microvilli in them. And these parietal cells are pyramidal cells, pyramid-like cells concentrated in the upper half of the gland. So generally they are concentrated in the upper half of the gland. So here you cannot see in the anterior most part, and not even they are present in the posterior most part. They are generally present and restricted to the upper half of the gland. That doesn't mean that they should not be present in the base, but much of the concentration of these cells could be observed in the upper half. The function of these cells is to secrete hydrochloric acid and gastric intrinsic factor. And this gastric intrinsic factor is necessary for absorption of vitamin B12 in the ileum, which is a part of small intestine. These parietal cells possess a unique intracellular tubulovascular system. Many mitochondria and secretory intracellular canaliculi. These canaliculi are deep invaginations of the apical plasma membrane lined by microvilli. You can see here there are a lot of canaliculi, deep invaginations, which are lined by the microvilli. Hence, this is the very characteristic feature of the parietal cell, by which you can easily identify them and differentiate them from other cells present in the gastric gland. The next type of cell that are present in the gastric gland are chief cells or zymogenic cells. These are also, you can see here at the base of the gastric glands, you can see many cells with many granules in it at the apical tip, apical portion of it, and they are called chief cells. These chief cells are pyramidal cells residing in the lower half of the gland. We have already seen. And the function of these cells is to secrete a hormone called pepsinogen. And this pepsinogen is the precursor of enzyme pepsin, which is a strong proteolytic enzyme, and precursors of two other enzymes such as renin and lipases. So renin is a milk curdling enzyme that is responsible for digestion of milk, and renin is secreted as prorenin. Okay, that is the precursor of the active form renin. And these cells, chief cells, display an abundance of basal rough endoplasmic reticulum and supranuclear Golgi complex and many apical zymogen granules. The very important characteristic feature of this chief cell is they possess lot of rough endoplasmic reticulum which are required for synthesis of proteolytic enzymes as well as renin and lipases. Hence, all these the enzymes that are secreted will be packed with the help of supranuclear Golgi complex, and once packed, these vesicles will be aggregated at the apical portion of the cells. Along with chief cells and oxyntic cells, there are a lot of mucous neck cells, and these cells are located in the neck of the gland. In this region they are located. Okay. Many mucous neck cells, or sometimes they are also called simply neck cell. They are present and they are concentrated in the neck region of the gland. And they possess very short microvilli apical mucus granules, prominent Golgi complex, numerous mitochondria, and some basal RER. RER means rough endoplasmic reticulum. Along with this, some diffuse neuroendocrine system. These cells are called DNES cells. You can see here small cells which are situated at the base of these glands. Okay, small triangular shaped cells here. Simply they are referred as endocrine cells. These cells are called diffuse neuroendocrine cells, or simply it is called neuroendocrine system. And these cells are responsible for synthesis of many hormones. These cells are also referred as enteroendocrine cells or APED cells. APED cells means amine precursor uptake and decarboxylation cells. The nomenclature is given based on their function. Let us not discuss in detail about the functions of these cells, which we are going to study about them in the coming classes. These cells are also include more than a dozen type of cells that house many small hormone containing granules, usually concentrated in the basal cytoplasm. Each particular enteroendocrine cell is believed to secrete only one hormone. That means there is no multiple hormone secretion. Only one hormone is secreted by these APET cells. And we know that in order to synthesize the proteinaceous hormones, lot of rough endoplasmic reticulum is required, and in order to pack them, Golgi complex is required. Hence, lot of energy is also required. As a result, each of these enteroendocrine cells definitely will possess abundant mitochondria and lot of rough endoplasmic reticulum as well as Golgi complexes. There are some cells which are called regenerative cells. They are also located primarily in the neck and isthmus. In this region, they are located. They have the capacity to divide, mitotically divide. Hence, they are called regenerative cells. And they replace all the epithelial cells of the gland, gastric pit, and luminal surface. And this is very important because since this layer is exposed to the external environment and the products of the external environment, wear and tear as well as death of these cells are very common. Hence, the regenerative cells present in this are responsible for the replacement of these cells which are dead and infectious. The cardiac and pyloric glands are different from fundic glands in that they are coiled tubular mucus secreting glands and lack Schiff cells. So the fundic glands chiefly possess the tubular mucus secreting glands, and they generally do not have Schiff cells which produce the enzymes that are required for the digestion. So this is all about the detailed anatomy of mammalian stomach. For any further information, you can refer to these textbooks which are commonly available in most of the libraries of our college. Thank you.